And holy smokes, the Fed has finally broke something. Of course, we know by now the Fed has been raising interest rates faster than any other time in history, and this is causing a major collapse in the banking system. First starting off with Silvergate, then Signature Bank, and then the big one, SVB, Silicon Valley Bank, being unable to pay out their depositors. And now the Fed has to step in, the government had to step in, FDIC had to step in.
The Fed, through all this easy money over the past, let's just call it decade and a half, has really messed things up. Has gotten people believing that easy money is the thing, which is why these banks are all in trouble. They all borrowed all this cheap money and they made stupid low interest rate investments, and now it's coming home to roost. So the Fed's in a real box.
So the big question is, will the Fed have enough guts to continue raising rates to fight inflation, or will they chicken out and pause and eventually pivot soon? With these interest rate hikes, this is showing some major cracks in the economy. And in my last video, I talked about the very first domino falling. And now that we see the second domino has fallen with Credit Suisse. Credit Suisse is a major bank in Switzerland. So this issue, this problem of these bank collapses is going global. It's not just something that's happening in the US economy. And who knows what is going to happen in the ripple effects of Credit Suisse and how that's going to affect the American economy. So the second domino has fallen. Who knows where the third domino is going to fall? Is it going to be one of these even major banks, one of the top 5 banks? Are they going to start getting into trouble? We see it now in the stock market. Tons of bank stocks are continuing to fall.
We continue to anticipate that ongoing increases in the target range for the federal funds rate will be appropriate in order to attain a stance of monetary policy that is sufficiently restrictive to return inflation to 2% over time. In addition, we are continuing the process of significantly reducing the size of our balance sheet.
That was Jerome Powell, the head of the Fed, testifying on Capitol Hill just a few weeks ago, where he mentions that along with trying to fight inflation by raising interest rates, they're also trying to fight inflation by lowering their balance sheet. However, the complete opposite has happened. The beginning of this whole bank crisis that has been playing out the past couple of weeks, with the banks unable to pay out their withdrawals of all the depositors are freaking out, and this whole bank run situation has happened. To prevent more bank runs from happening, the Fed has stepped in. The Fed can cover all of the withdrawals that is going on, so there's no need for a bank run. So the Fed has actually added to their balance sheet. They've added actually just under $300 billion to their balance sheet. So this is definitely not helping out with inflation.
The Fed's balance sheet for the week ending this past Wednesday, and it is up by $297 billion as a result of a couple failed banks, as a result of borrowing at the discount window. Borrowing at the discount window rose by $148.2 billion.
The Fed is going to have another meeting next week on March 22nd, where they're going to consider raising interest rates. So are they going to hike or are they not? Goldman Sachs actually came out with an article that says they don't think that the Fed is going to raise. They're actually going to pause interest rate hikes because of this whole bank crisis situation. If they continue to raise rates, this whole bank crisis situation is going to continue to get worse. More banks are going to fall. More dominoes are going to fall.
The process of getting inflation back down to 2% has a long way to go and is likely to be bumpy. The latest economic data have come in stronger than expected, which suggests that the ultimate level of interest rates is likely to be higher than previously anticipated. If the totality of the data were to indicate that faster tightening is warranted, we'd be prepared to increase the pace of rate hikes.
And after Jerome Powell said that during his testimony, many were expecting that the Fed would actually increase rates by 0.5 basis points heading into March 22nd. That'll be next week. However, that would just be absolutely ridiculous. We did see the markets fall with that expectation of a 0.5 basis points, which is a lot more than 0.25, which is what they have been doing. However, now with this whole bank crisis situation, the Fed has finally broke something. There is a 25% chance that the Fed may actually pause, so actually not raising interest rates at all. However, it is more likely that the Fed will raise interest rates by 0.25 basis points. Jerome Powell did mention that he expects the peak of the federal funds rate to be 5.25%. We're currently sitting at 4.75%. So it's very likely once we head into next week that the Fed is going to increase rates again by 0.25%, which will get us to 5.0% federal funds rate. And once we head into May, it's very likely that the Fed will increase rates again by 0.25 basis points if the Fed expects to stick to their plan to get the federal funds rate to 5.25%. And so the big question is, will they actually stick to this plan? Will they actually do what they say they're going to do to battle inflation?
I think inflation's not going to go away anytime soon, which is a problem. And these banks are very sick because their assets and liabilities and durations are all out of whack, which is why you're seeing these regional bank stocks getting destroyed. What I think they should frankly do is take interest rates way up, and absolutely kill inflation. And if a couple eggs break and a couple of guys go out of business, it's okay. This constant need to bail out or keep financially unsound companies going needs to stop.
And just like Mark here, there are many that also agree that the Fed and the government and FDIC should not have stepped in to bail out these banks. And so if we really did have free markets and all of these companies and all of these banks, if they're insolvent, they would just allow them to go under and just go bankrupt. However, that's not the case. The Fed steps in to protect them. It was probably a good thing that the Fed actually stepped in and put out this fire before it got worse, mainly because if you think about it, all of those companies that had well over $250,000, they would essentially be screwed, losing millions of dollars that they had inside of these banks. And so other companies who do have well over $250,000 inside of their current bank that hasn't collapsed yet, well, they could be thinking, maybe I should start taking out some of my money just in case. Well, then that spreads from one company to the next. These banks eventually will run into the same situation as SVB, where they're unable to pay out all of these withdrawals, and that will just continue bank runs, and it will just continue to get worse if the Fed didn't step in and put out the fire early and making sure that all of these depositors now are able to get their money out. Even if your bank is insolvent and unable to pay out, the Fed will step in and help, therefore reducing any situation that could be potentially much worse than what we have run into. And so this allows the Fed much more room to continue to raise rates to fight inflation, because now they don't have to worry about any more bank runs because they just have it covered. There could potentially still be more things, more cracks that show, more dominoes that fall. So we'll see how it all kind of plays out. And I'll go ahead and keep you guys updated on what's going to happen next week if the Fed is going to raise rates. So definitely please consider hitting that thumbs up button and subscribing to the channel to stay updated. I'm really trying hard to try to get this channel monetized. I need 1,000 subscribers and about 4,000 watch hours. So if you're still watching, you are freaking awesome. All right, guys, that is about it for this video. My name is Jimmy Invest, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.